Hey, you're listening to the Riverdale podcast. This is episode number 100. My name is Jonathan. Welcome to lovely Riverdale, USA. This is a weekly Archie Comics fan podcast. We update every Saturday morning, and every week we bring you the adventures in the world of Archie Comics with reviews and the news of the week and new releases and all that great stuff. Today we are deviating from our normal routine to bring you a special 100th episode. Today we have a conversation with Dan Parent. Dan Parent should be known to all of you as a dude who's doing great work at Archie Comics, who has been doing great work at Archie Comics for a number of years. Before we get to that conversation, and not to bury the lead, I do want to let you guys know about the new releases of the week. We'll do the new releases, and we'll get right down to our conversation with Dan Parent with your questions that you sent in. It's a big, exciting show. First things first, this past Wednesday the 29th from Archie Comics, we got Archie Double Digest number 248 for $3.99 and Sonic the Hedgehog Archives Volume 22 for $7.99. Coming up next week from Archie, we get Archie number 652. That's the third part of the Archie World Tour storyline. I'm sure we will be talking about that with Dan Parent momentarily. Also, next week, we will have the Fox number 4, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, The Magic Within, Volume 4 for $10.99. That is the final volume, I believe, of the Tanya Del Rio Sabrina the Teenage Witch stories. Awesome. Also, next week, we'll have Sonic Universe number 60. That's next week, February the 5th. Also this week, over at the digital store, digital.archiecomics.com, on your Archie app, in Comixology, you will find Betty and Veronica Go for the Gold. This is a digital exclusive, $3.99, 100-plus pages of Olympic-themed stories, skiing, skating, snowboarding, Winter Olympic-themed stories. Awesome. So those are new releases for this past Wednesday, the 29th. This coming Wednesday, the 5th, and your digital releases of the week from Archie Comics. I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank all you folks who are tuning in for the first time, And I guess without further ado, Dan Parent, welcome to lovely Riverdale, USA.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
I am curious if I can ask what it is that you're working on today. I assume, perhaps wrongly, that you're working all the time with the amount of output that you put out. So can you give us a little tease as to what you're working on most recently?
I'm actually working on a few things at one time, the way it usually works out. I just worked on the cover for B&V 272, which is going to be the first part of a 6-part storyline. It's called Farewell, Betty and Veronica, and it's going to take up 6 issues of Betty and Veronica. It's written by Michael Uslan, who's he's no introduction needed for him. He's a really great writer who wrote the Archie Wedding, and so I'm drawing that. And I'm also, at the same time, working on Kevin Keller, number 15, 14 and 15. And then, and I'm also working on Archie 656.
So you're quite a ways ahead on Archie then.
What's that?
So you're quite a ways ahead on Archie.
Yeah, well, the issue Archie 656 is, I think, coming out in May. And then the B&V 272, I think, also is around that time, May. And then Kevin is in July, so we got a little bit of time on that. But we work, try and stay 3 to 6 months ahead. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but we try to stay ahead that much.
Cool. Well, do you wanna roll into these listener questions?
Sure.
Awesome. Let's we're gonna start out. These are roughly in the order that they came in, but
Okay.
in no particular order in terms of content. But the first
Mhm.
question comes from Luke. Luke has a great blog about current and historical Archie comics. I'll pass along the link if you're interested. But he
Okay.
says, "What is your favorite Archie series you have worked on?"
Hmm. Let me see. Well, it's always it's hard to pick one. I'll say that the my in one way my favorite is the original Veronica series because that was like the first real book I worked on, and I worked on it for quite a long time. I think I did about 150 issues of Veronica. And that was that was the first full book I did was Veronica #1 back in 1989, which is Veronica in Paris. We used to do she'd go to a different issue, or I mean, sorry, she'd go to a different location in each issue. And then after that, after number 21 or 22, it went to just a regular Veronica series. So I worked on and off on that for a long, long, long time. So I'd say that one. I'm also going to pick another one and say the Betty and Veronica Spectacular series from the mid, 2005, 2006, 2007. Because that was the book where I sort of kind of was able to sort of break out in my own style, and we were able to kind of change the format of the book. And I think that book really sort of artistically was set my style. And then I'm going to pick three book titles, and I'm going to say Kevin Keller, of course, most recent book, because that's just been sort of like just a lot of fun and a real game changer for Archie, and just I've been able to be really creative with that book. So I'll say those three titles.
Cool. Yeah, the Archie Spectacular stuff. That's when you came in and you were doing a lot of photo spreads. There's a lot of interesting design stuff in those.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, what was interesting with that book was there were really the book was about to be canceled, so they were they were going to cancel the B&V Spectacular, and we were at the last minute. I was like, can we just do something really different, give it like a fashion magazine sort of look, and sort of at the same time, I don't know, I just sort of found a style that really worked, and that was a lot of fun, and it just sort of really was creative and fun, and sort of set the style for how I draw now. I mean, I've been at Archie forever, but kind of, we used to sort of be told to draw under the DeCarlo style, and I think it's a really great thing because he's like the best Archie artist ever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes you have to sort of break out on your own too, and I think I was able to move a little bit away more from the DeCarlo style and do my own style at the same time. And I think that was why that book worked so well for me.
Yeah, I loved that book. I especially loved. And I don't know how much you had to do with this. The logo treatment with the big B&V up in the corner.
Yeah, yeah, that was something they like I said, they were going to try different things because the book wasn't doing well, and it did well. The change really did well for quite a while. They were able to do that new logo for I don't know, half of the series at least, and yeah, it was just this, we had a lot more fashions and just more reader input and different features, and yeah, and it helped it stand apart from the regular Betty and Veronica book too, because we had both titles and they were both pretty similar, and this kind of made that book stand away from the regular monthly book. So it was a lot of fun.
Totally. Okay, so next question comes from the handle of Betty Reggie over on the Archie fans board.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of questions from those guys. Betty Reggie says, "Please ask Dan, will we have a printed book of Cheryl Blossom stories ever? I would love that. Also, will Dan do a cover for Life with Archie?"
Well, a printed Cheryl Blossom book, that seems like a real possibility because Cheryl Blossom's popular. There's a lot of material with Cheryl. So yeah, I'll have to just bring that up and see if there's any plans for that. It seems very likely. They like to do stuff with Cheryl. They're always encouraging us to do Cheryl stories, and I know John Goldwater likes Cheryl Blossom, so that seems like a possibility. What was the other part of the question?
The other part of the question is, will you be doing a cover for Life with Archie?
Well, maybe it'd be a variant, of course, if I did one. But yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, I should look into that too.
Yeah, I would love to see your interpretation of the older Archie crowd.
Yeah, yeah. I've drawn a few issues of future Kevin and his partner or his husband, but yeah, I haven't really done anything to do with the older Archie character. So that definitely would be fun.
Cool. Moving on, we have a question from Murray. It's a bit of a long one, but we'll get right to it. It says, "Hello. First, I love your work and really appreciate you creating Kevin Keller. I also like the way your current art updates the characters, but still has enough of the house style to seem familiar. I was just wondering about the content of the latest Archie floppies. It seems like it's moved away from jokes, like the classic Archie comics, and more into stories. The World Tour arc has started out great, and I'm enjoying it, but it seems to focus on Archie's love life and the stress that creates than any real humor. Is this something that you plan on continuing, or is this just a phase the comics are going through? I still love the art, and the stories are fun to read, but I do miss a little of the sarcasm from characters like Reggie and Jughead."
Right, right. Yeah, well, we are focusing more on long format stories, which, of course, I guess when you're doing a longer story, there probably is a little less jokey sort of stuff because you don't have like a big beginning, middle, and end to wrap up in 6 pages. I still like the old stories, the 5 and 6 pagers, and I hope I think we're going to get back to doing some more of those. I hope so. I do like those a lot, as well as the long form stories. And I always try, even though in the long story, like the World Tour story does focus a lot on Archie and Valerie. But I still do try and focus on Jughead and Veronica fighting and the little struggles here and there. See, I do try and incorporate the humor of the characters still. And I think in the World Tour, it kind of gets a little goofier towards the end. It started out a little more serious, but you never want to get too serious. But the long stories, like the Archie Valerie thing, has just clicked. So that does take up a lot of the World Tour.
What are the challenges that are unique to writing something like a 4-part arc as opposed to writing something like a tight 6-page story?
Well, when you're writing a 4-part story arc, you have the freedom to sort of flesh out the characters more, but you have to make sure that you have enough content to really stretch it out too. You don't want to sit there and just sort of drag it out either. 6-page story is just you have a very short time to get a message across, and that's why usually the 6-page story is good for a joke. Usually you have to set a quick setup and then a funny ending.
Mm-hmm.
But there's really no secret to it. It's just when when I write a 4-part story, I just make sure that I write down all the notes and I map out a timeline of what happens. I never want to just write it as I'm going along. And one good thing about the long stories, especially with the World Tour, we intentionally put a lot of characters in there because we're kind of celebrating all the Archie musical stuff that we've done over the years. You really, you can really do a lot with a lot of characters in a long story, which, thank God, in this story it's long because, like I said, we've got Josie and Sabrina and the Bingos and Madhouse Glads. Everyone's in this. So, but yeah, that's really there's no like I said, there's no secret. You just map out a long story very carefully. Plus, you have to also map it out carefully too, where each issue ends. If you're doing a 4-parter, you want to make sure you don't give away all the story in the first 2 parts. You do have to sort of time it out a little bit. And it's 6 pagers are just quick.
Yep. And are you keeping in mind then what the story is going to look like when it's collected as well?
Yes, because that's a reality nowadays that to maximize, profits, and all the companies do this now, is, trade paperbacks.
Totally.
Are where that's where it's at now. Because, 32-page comics, they just are, they're in less places nowadays, they're harder to sell, where graphic novels and trade paperbacks have a lot longer shelf life. So we definitely have that in mind, when we're doing stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on. Captain Hero over on the Archie fan boards says, in the 25 years that you've worked at Archie, what has been your most rewarding experience?
My most rewarding experience. Well, I would say, a couple things come to mind. You know, uh, doing conventions are really great overall because you meet the fans and then they're really supportive and nice and they kind of make you really appreciate what you do. I'd say with the most rewarding thing was probably we won the GLAAD award for Kevin Keller.
Yeah.
And that was really great because it was, you get such, recognition for your work, and you really see how it affects and moves a lot of people. So just, receiving that and talking to people who have been, so thankful and moved by Kevin, I'd say that's probably, the most moving thing that's happened since I've been at Archie.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of conventions, I know that you do a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. I can't say no.
Yeah, I'm always curious as to what is the crowd that you meet at conventions? Is it mostly like, old geeky guys like me? Or are you meeting kids? Are you meeting women? Are you meeting...
It is all over the map.
Awesome.
It's all over the map. It's a lot of little kids who are starting to get into the digests, who are really getting into the characters, learning to read. Many of them are, they're reading their parents' digest, their moms and dads' digests. It's a lot of kids. Then there's the older collectors who are 20s, 30s, 40s older that are just, comic book collectors that like it. There's older guys like me, and you get to your 40s and stuff, who remember Archie as a part of their childhood, who kind of are into Archie for nostalgia, and some just buy the old books, but then there's some who are into nostalgia who are still keeping up with the new stuff. And then there's just fans who like the style. Like there's some fans who don't necessarily read every Archie book and every comic, but they love the style of Archie, so they come for sketches and they want themselves drawn as Archie characters, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But Archie has a very, very diverse audience, really diverse. So it's all over the map, all over.
So when you're traveling, how many conventions do you do a year?
Well, I think I'm signed up for 18 this year. I think last year I added up that I did. I think I didn't mean to do as. I think I was supposed to do about 18 last year, but I think I ended up doing like 22.
Wow. Yeah. So when you're traveling, are you working as well? Are you at the hotel at night penciling or writing?
Yes. Yeah. I have to travel. I actually work really well on planes, so if I have to fly somewhere, flying on a plane is a good time to write. It's just whip out your pad, just start sketching out pages, on your, for a script. Drawing, I work on stuff in hotels, sometimes even at the shows if they get a little slow.
Mm-hmm.
The work definitely goes with you. I mean, I really try to catch up when I'm not working. Like right now, I don't have any shows scheduled until March, so this is a real catch-up time for me right now to make sure even that I get caught up or even a little ahead before the shows kick in. But it never works out perfectly because you might agree to do a show 6 months in advance. And you don't know what your deadlines are going to be in 6 months, so you just wing it.
Mm-hmm.
You just wing it. You work late nights, and you just get through it. At this point, I've managed to keep my deadlines pretty well.
Awesome. Okay, back to the folks on Archie fans. Goldberg fan has a two-part question, or two separate questions rather. Mm-hmm. When you first started at Archie Comics, did any writers or artists take you under their wing? That's the first question. That's the longer one. Maybe we'll do the second question first because it's a little quicker. But are you coming to California soon?
I will be in San Diego at San Diego Comic-Con in July.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any other California shows. I've done WonderCon before, but I won't be doing that. But this year, I'll be at San Diego, and the other West Coast I'll be doing is Emerald City in April.
Cool.
Or is that April or is it March? I think it's end of March is what Emerald City. So, but yeah, that'll be San Diego is my California show for this year.
Cool. So then back to the first question. Mm-hmm. When you first started at Archie Comics, did any artists or writers take you under their wing?
Yes. The great Dan DiCarlo. when I started there, he was, of course, he was like my idol. When I started there, he was, everything that I aspired to be, Archie. And when I started there, he was very easy to talk to, and was always willing to look at your work and go over it and give you advice. And Archie encouraged that too, because Archie wants their younger artists to draw like Dan DeCarlo at the time, especially. So they were always encouraging the younger artists to work with Dan DeCarlo. But Dan did really take, he took me under his wing. He would ink covers of mine that needed a little extra help at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the early '90s, he was trying to kind of slow down a little bit. So he would do rough layouts, and I would finish his pencils, and did that for quite a while. And that was really great training. But that was probably better training than going to art school, because Dan's layouts are so phenomenal, and yet everything was still sort of there. Like, you could still see the great figure drawing he did, even though it was rough. And then I would just go over it and tighten up a lot, and that was really a great way to work. It was it was good for him because he could have a little time to golf, which he liked to do, and it was great for me because I was like working on top of his great layout. That was my best learning experience.
Yeah, I mean, DeCarlo obviously gets a lot of credit as being brilliant at drawing the characters, but I think maybe less appreciated is his knack for comic timing and his layouts.
Oh yeah. His layouts were so good, and his anatomy is so good. I mean, we all know he drew beautiful Betty and Veronica figures, but the way he just drew figures so beautifully, and I think he was one of the best artists ever in comic history.
Agreed. I guess let's try listening to a call.
Okay.
Hey, Jonathan, it's your friend and fellow Archie Comics fan, John from Iowa. Congratulations on your 100th podcast. It's a lot of hard work, and I enjoy the show week after week. So hopefully we'll have another 100 at least. Also, thanks to Dan Parent for all your good creative work and for answering these questions. I've got a couple brief ones of my own. So first, what's the chance that we will see the return of the Carnies? I thought that they were a visibly very interesting and creative family, and I'd really like to see them again in print. And then between the Riverdale rescue game and Afterlife with Archie comic book, someone at Archie Comics really seems interested in portraying Ginger Lopez as like a bi-lesbian teen character nowadays. And so I guess my question is, what about maybe doing a series of short Ginger Lopez backup strips in the Kevin Keller book? It might be kind of interesting, bringing in a different perspective of stories with maybe lesbian, gay, bisexual teens in the comic book, especially since she doesn't seem quite as comfortable with it as Kevin. So, anyways, thank you very much, and congratulations on the 100. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's see, the Carnies.
Yeah, can you tell everybody a little bit about the Carnies first?
Yeah, the Carnies were a creation of mine and Bill Golyer's. Now, Bill Golyer also has worked for Archie for a long time. Back in the early '90s, we created this group of characters called the Carnies, and the premise was they were a bunch of carnival freaks, carnival folk, I should say, who tried to assimilate into normal life. So you had this, like the mom was the fat lady and the dad was a strong man, and they had a little wolf boy and a two-headed daughter and all this stuff. And it's mostly like their story about them trying to like adjust to normal society. Sort of like in that vein of like the Munsters and Bewitched, trying to assimilate into normal society. And we did some stories there were a backup in Archie and Friends. We would do some Carney stories. Then we did a backup in a couple, like a Sabrina giant-sized book. And, the stories just kind of floated around Archie for a while. And then they did let us do a Carney's giant-sized special. So it was a lot of fun. nothing really came of it. We did then we did get like an interest from Cartoon Network. We had a holding deal with them. Nothing really happened with that either. But so there are some appreciative Carney fans out there. It was a lot of fun. I would do something with the Carneys again if it came up. But they're just sort of part of Archie history, and like I said, I love working on it.
Yeah, I picked up the Carney's giant size off the shelf at the grocery store when that first came out. I was a big fan of that as well. I haven't found the other stories in the Sabrina stuff. I'd love to go back and hunt those down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those would be fun. I wouldn't mind collecting those in a trade or something. That would be kind of fun.
Now, do you retain ownership of that?
Actually, of the Carneys, we did. Bill Gollier and I do own the characters. So yeah, then Archie and the folks at Archie agreed to that. So that was pretty rare. Pretty rare for that to happen. But yeah, they did. They let us keep the ownership, and still printed the stories, which was good. And then Ginger Lopez. Ginger Lopez. Yeah, I created Ginger Lopez back in 2001, I think, 2001, and I would love to do more with Ginger Lopez. I was as surprised as anyone else to see her coming out.
Yeah,
because that was in the Afterlife with Archie, which is a different realm. It's a different world than the regular Archie world. And I know in that book, her and Nancy are having sort of a Brokeback Mountain sort of affair going on, which is kind of interesting. So what I would love to do more with Ginger Lopez, if we would pursue the bisexual angle or the gay angle in the regular book or not. That'd be something that I would of course be willing to discuss. But definitely love to do more Ginger Lopez stuff because she's another character that I really like that we don't get to use as much as we could. So that's always like her and Cheryl. There's always these characters that you just would love to do more with. So, but yeah, I'm a fan of Ginger's. Since I came up with her. So yeah, of course. So.
Yeah, there's been some sort of speculation in the fan community surrounding the Riverdale Rescue game. Because I don't know how much time you've spent with it or anything, but there are you sort of build relationships within it.
Right.
There are certain characters with whom you can build like same-sex relationships, and some with which you can't build same-sex relationships. This is my understanding of it.
I've heard about that too. Yeah.
So I think people are definitely reading into that.
Because I know, like, there's, from what I understand, like, I don't think you can. There's certain characters that you can, and I guess Ginger must be one that you can. So I'm not sure what characters in the game that you can or not, but I don't know how that built. Yeah, I don't think that really has that much play as to what goes on in the comic book world. But I'll have to check out the game more, as I've heard how great it is. I know a lot of people like it, so I heard they have a new version to download, so I have to do that.
Yeah, they just did the new Valentine's Day update.
Yes.
I unfortunately I spent a couple days with it and realized that it was going to be many more days. Unfortunately, I just had to cut myself off.
Yeah.
So Camille writes in and says, "Thanks for giving us the opportunity to ask Dan Parent a question." She says, "What two characters do you enjoy writing together the most? What story would you like to write with these characters?"
Well, that's a very easy, a quick answer for that one. The two characters I like to write. Does she mean together at the same time?
Yep.
Jughead and Veronica.
Yeah.
Because Jughead and Veronica together are just like this. They're like, they're just. I would do I've done a lot of. People know that from the stories that I've written, I put them together a lot, and I am always, they're always together in some form in any kind of Archie and the Gang story that I write. I would love to do a story of Jughead and Veronica on a desert island together where they just, want to kill each other. But yeah, they're just, I did one story once, I think, that sticks in my mind that I really liked, where they do like a family tree project in school and they find out they're like distantly related. And like, they almost want to like, kill themselves because they're so upset that they have any sort of like link, any lineage. So, but yeah, they're just fun because they're just, they're probably the two characters too that also have the most personality. Veronica has a lot of personality, and Jughead is just such a unique character in his own right. So, but yeah, those are the two.
Okay, so not to give anything away, but if you were to write the story of them on a desert island, do they eventually like compromise and work together? Does that devalue that sort of relationship, or are they just constantly at each other?
I think like they're constantly at each other. They might have to work together to like get off the island or something, but then they would instantly hate each other right away. Like I think but then not that they hate each other, because in the Archie world, they all definitely have some like for each other. I mean, if something were to happen to Veronica or Jughead, they would care about the other if something bad happened. But the best way to keep it going is nobody wants to see them becoming friends.
Mm-hmm.
People want to see them at each other's throat. And that's why that's the most fun right there, is seeing them like going at it. So I wouldn't want to get too serious with them.
It's like Charlie Brown and Lucy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Deep down they care about each other, but it's you always want to see her pull that football away. It's just it's just the dynamic you enjoy.
Okay, this question comes from Pep over on the fan boards. I don't know how sincere he's being with us, but this is the question. I'd like to know if he's going to be, he being you, I would like to know if you are going to be involved with the much-anticipated Jughead reboot Archie Comics is supposedly planning.
Well, I have not been given that assignment, and I know that there's talk of a new Jughead 32-page book, but I really don't know anything about it, so I'm not involved.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I got on that one.
Okay, yeah, I know everyone would love to see the Jughead 32 come back. I had assumed when the book was canceled, I guess late 2012, they said they had big plans for Jughead. I just assumed that was Afterlife with Archie when that came around again.
Right. Yeah, I haven't heard anything on that recently. I know they've talked, but I don't know where it's at, to be honest. So hopefully soon, because hey, I love Jughead.
Yeah. I mean, I know that the majority of the fan base would love to see more, floppy issues, more 32-page issues.
Right.
But it's just, I would assume it's a matter of the market bearing that.
Yeah, that is true.
All right, so moving to the end of the questions, we got a few more here. Mm-hmm. Carissa writes in. Carissa's a huge Josie and the Pussycats fan.
Me too.
For the record, she says, how did the whole Valerie and Archie idea come up? Was it purely a decision made by you, or was Archie Comics looking for a new romantic interest for Archie?
Well, we're always looking for a romantic interest for Archie. And we were discussing it, I think, with Mike Pellerito. We were talking about it with him. And at first, we had talked about it being Archie and Josie, because they're both the leaders of their bands, and then one of us, it might have been Mike even, and says, "What about Valerie?" Because Valerie's always been an interesting character that we never explored a lot. And we're like, yeah. And then the more we talked about it, she's sort of really smart, and she's kind of sexy, and just underused as far as the characters go. And Archie's kind of a goofy doofus kind of guy,
mm-hmm.
and the contrast in their personalities just seem to work. Valerie being so like kind of level-headed, and then Archie being kind of a goof. I don't know. There seemed to be a good combo. And then when we did the first story, it just like flowed like very well. Like it was one of those stories that I wrote that was one of the easiest stories that I ever wrote. Like I wrote it so fast.
That was the one that you wrote and Bill Galvin drew?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And we had it they were writing songs, and they just kind of fell for each other. And it just you don't know why it works. It just does. And I don't think we would have gotten the same reaction or the same feeling if it had been Josie, and I don't think Melody was an option, because Melody, she's not the brightest bulb. But who knows? Maybe Melody's smarter than we think too. But the Valerie thing just worked for whatever reason, and obviously the fan reaction has been really strong to it, because I keep wanting more stories of it. So.
Yep, and we got the Archie marries Valerie storyline in, I guess that was 2012, a couple years back now.
It was that last year or the year before? I think it was I think it was 2012. Yeah, collected in the new trade that just came out this week. The Archie's Valentine, a rock and roll romance. Like it compiles the 4 issues that I did of Archie. Where there's one issue where Valerie has a marriage fantasy about what would happen if she married Archie. That just came out. That just got collected. So yeah, that was that's another one of those things where it's just been so much fun, and the reader reaction's been so good.
Yeah, and obviously that storyline leads us into the World Tour storyline that's going on now. Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Which that was quite an undertaking just for the amount of characters, because everybody under the sun is in that book, including when I was really happy to do. I haven't the third part I think comes out pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
We have I'll give you like a teaser. We in that one issue we brought back Bridget, who we hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah.
And Bridget was a character I created her too, and I really liked Bridget a lot, and hadn't used her in a while, and I was so happy to bring her back. Just because, once again, you forget about these characters sometimes, and and then you remember how much you like them and how much they meant to people. So
mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're happy to have Bridget in the story, because of course she's a singer and it's a world tour, so it was only natural that we see Bridget again.
Yep. So we have one more question written in, and then one more caller question.
Mm-hmm.
But this is from Martha. She says, who and what are your biggest source of inspiration?
Who and what?
Yes. So maybe who like a person, and then maybe what like a piece of art or a body of work or something. I mean, that's how I'm interpreting it, I guess.
Yeah. Who is my biggest inspiration?
Mm.
Well, I would have to just say, like, if we're talking about comic books, I'd have to just say, Dan DeCarlo is, but there's also a lot of people like I think Frank Doyle stories are really underrated, and those really stand out. And I think we go outside to Archie comics too. There's a lot of inspirations I've had from other comics and other
mm-hmm.
artists. I mean, God, it's like endless. I mean, I grew up reading Superman and Batman. Another area where I'm really inspired by was, I grew up reading Harvey comics as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Very inspired by them and the art style that they set, the simplicity of the style. I think I'm really attracted to to simple graphic styles. And as far as what goes, I'm really inspired by all things like pop culture. I watch a lot of TV and movies, and I think that helps me keep relevant in the stories, because I just am so entranced in television and in movies, and I read a lot, and just like magazines and books, and like I said, it's just there's not enough time in the day to to get through all the stuff that I really enjoy, but I think that's why I work well with Archie Comics, because
so do you think I mean, maybe these are sort of inseparable at this point, but do you think that you would be reading as much and watching as much TV and be such a student of pop culture if it weren't a part of your work?
I would. Yeah, I would. I just grew up just being very into especially television. I just watched so much TV as a kid. I know it's not good to it's not good for people, or so they say. But it worked for me. I just I think I definitely would be. So like I said, I have a job where it kind of comes in handy. So kept me off the streets as a kid. What can I say?
Okay, well let's go to our last fan question. This is another call.
Hello, my name is Roderick King. I'm from Liberty, Georgia. My question is, do you compare to the late Ed DeCarlo or to the late legendary cartoons William Hanna and Joseph Barbera?
So the question
Also,
was,
out of all the characters you've drawn, who thinks is the most prettiest and sexiest in the world of Archie comics, mostly in Riverdale?
All right. So that was a two-parter question, right?
Yeah, a little hard to hear.
So the first part was, who am I most compared to? Was it Dan DeCarlo or Hanna-Barbera?
Yeah, or the sort of I guess the Hanna-Barbera, like the Josie stuff. Or maybe who you're most inspired by. I didn't.
Yeah. Well, as far as compared to, it would be Dan DeCarlo, just because my style is closer to his than anything else, or more inspired by his, I should say. And then the craziest, sexiest character, did he say?
Yeah.
I think. Well, I have to say, probably Cheryl Blossom is probably like the craziest and sexiest character.
She's certainly
Archie.
She's certainly the most scandalous.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think through the years, the character who's gotten away with the most, as far as we can get away with in an Archie comic, has probably been Cheryl Blossom. So yeah, I'd have to say Cheryl in that category.
Yeah, they recently reprinted her first appearance in one of the super specials, the big magazine editions, and I had never read it before. But there's the scene where she's at the beach and is going to take her top off.
Yeah.
Until someone intervened, I was very, very stunned by that.
Yeah, and I think there's a story too. I don't know if it's the same story or not, but there's a story too where she's drinking beer.
Really?
And she's putting like a soda label over the can so you don't know it's beer.
That's right. I think I have seen that.
I don't know which story that is. I don't even know if they're reprinting it anymore. I think maybe they are, but I remember that at the time, and that was one of the big reasons why Cheryl went away for a while, because they were getting some outcry from her being so sexy and suggestive, and then she went away for I think almost a decade, which was great for me because I worked on the Love Showdown storyline in the early 90s. That was the first big project I worked on that got a lot of attention. And it was great because it was an opportunity for me to bring back Cheryl Blossom.
Yeah, and there's definitely a place for Cheryl Blossom within that Riverdale crew.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's the biggest thorn in Betty and Veronica's side, and people love her. And then the angle we went with in the 90s when we kind of had to think of an idea for her was, basically, we did we did some mini series, and she had her own series for quite a while. And the premise usually was about her just trying to be like a media star, and I guess kind of like the early version of Kim Kardashian. She was just trying everything she could do to become like famous.
I think there's definitely room for her within the Archie crew, the Riverdale crew, of just being like that quote unquote bad kid.
Yeah. Because with Veronica, she's a spoiled brat, but she has to within reason. But Cheryl's actually pretty nasty. like Cheryl can actually be a real bad girl.
That sort of leads me into a question that I like to ask. I've talked to a bunch of folks who have worked on Archie over the years, and I would ask, in your opinion, what is it that has made these characters so timeless and has led them to this 70-plus years of success?
Well,
it's an essay question.
Right. The best I can surmise is, so many of us grew up on Archie, and I think Archie now is just a part of like American culture. Like Batman, Superman, Archie's been around as long. I grew up on Archie. I was an Archie fan. I would probably be reading and collecting Archie comics even if I didn't work for Archie. But Archie becomes just ingrained in our minds. And it passes along from generation to generation. You see these young kids reading Archie. I think the digests are a big way that Archie passes on from generation to generation.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it really stands up. It's really the characters at the end of the day are what keeps it going. I mean, the characters are just good characters. You don't have any other characters like Jughead and Archie. They just, there is just something about these characters that just lends itself to the fandom that they have. And you can do anything with the characters. You can do Little Archie. You can do Archie in Outer Space. You can do Archie, Archie 1. You can make the characters grown up, like Life with Archie. You can do fairy tale parodies with the characters, and the characters are still so strong. There's that's what makes the longevity there is the strength of the characters.
That's what I've said in the past is that Archie is a bit more like Mickey Mouse than he is like Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that he's more pliable, maybe for lack of a better term.
Yeah, like you can really do. I mean, we do all the kinds of parodies with Archie, and through the years they've done parodies. movies, TV shows. We do, like I said, fairy tale stories, and the characters work in any setting partly because people know the characters, but the characters are so well defined that they just they're just so much fun to do in all the different sorts of plots and storylines. So that's like any movie or TV show that lasts a long time. It's always about the characters and always how the fans are invested in them, and that's the reason for Archie's longevity.
Yeah, I think for sure people have a perception that they are one-dimensional characters, and I think that part of that's partially true, and that's part of what, as you said, makes it possible for you to do all these different things. But there is a depth to these characters. I mean, can you speak to that?
Well, absolutely, because people will say to me, like, how do you keep coming up with story ideas for the characters? The main thread of the stories of Archie are always the Archie, Betty, Veronica love triangle. But there is depth of the characters because, like any sort of small town, I always think of thinking of like the Andy Griffith Show or something where there's like a small town setting. Just because you're, from a small town and life is sort of simple, doesn't mean that there's, things don't get complex. And another, reason that the Archie characters thrive is, there's a lot of people have a lot of issues in the world. There's a lot of bad things that happen. And, Archie is a simple sort of place to visit. I always say Archie is sort of like comfort food.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes you feel good. It brings you back to a simpler time, or even if you're stressed out, it unstresses you. And that's like the appeal of Archie. It's sort of like also it's like going back to an old friend. That's sort of like a reliable friend. It's always there, and that's the strength of something like Archie. It's the strength of things like when people go back to watching, like old TV shows they like and old movies. There's just something relaxing about it. I mean, here to be simple, but she's not. Same thing with Jughead. I mean, then I can run through all the characters. Kevin Keller. What appears to be simple. He's not as simple as he appears to be, and with these characters, just like I said, there's so much you can do, and there's so many more stories to pursue. I can, I've got a whole list of story ideas that can be worked on, and that shows right there the complexity of the characters.
Yeah, so you've been working with these characters for over 25 years, 27 years, something like that now?
It'll be 27 years in June that I've been at Archie. And actually, it may probably a little longer than that because I did start working at Archie when I was still in art school. So I towards the end of my, before I graduated from school, I had started. So yeah, it's 27 years.
So you've spent a lot of time working with them, and prior to that, a long time reading them. What do you know about these characters that we as readers don't know? What insight do you have that we don't?
From the characters before, or from working on them.
From having worked on them for all this time.
I don't know if I know anything that you guys don't know. I'm astounded because sometimes the fans will point out things that I miss or stuff that I forget about. I can actually say that I've actually been presented stories that I have completely forgotten. I've written like 5 and 6 page stories. I read them and I remember it, but I'm like it completely, I completely forgot about it. The fans are very keen on what goes on, and they don't miss a thing. So they probably know more than I do. But yeah, the insights that I have, I've worked on them for all these years, but yeah, I don't think I know anything more than anyone else.
Awesome. Well, obviously, we've all read the first half of the Archie World Tour storyline. We're excited for the second half. We've got the great Betty and Veronica storyline that's coming soon. Next issue, I think that starts up.
I think like 2 issues from now. I think B&V 270 is about to come out, and then this storyline starts in 272.
Awesome. And Kevin Keller continuing for the foreseeable future.
Yep, Kevin Keller's going strong, and we're doing a little superhero story arc with him, which is a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So Kevin joins the ranks of Pureheart and the rest of the Archie characters as having a superhero identity. And that's a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So I guess to wrap up, we're all really excited about the stuff you've got coming up. And I want to thank you on behalf of everybody listening and all the Archie fans for all the hard work you've put into writing and drawing these stories over the last 27 years. It's been great.
Well, I want to thank everybody for their support because you're all the reason I have a job. So, so I'm very, very thankful, very supportive, and at the end of the day, I'm a big Archie fan like everybody else. So I'm in the same ballpark as the rest of you guys. I am a fan first and an Archie employee second.
Awesome. So before we go, where do people track you down? How do people find out what those 18 or 22 conventions you're going to hit this year are going to be? How do we catch up with you?
Well, just follow me on Facebook. I'm updating my website now, which is danparent.com. So I'm in the process of updating it. So it's going to take me a while to do that. I'm kind of busy with a few other things, but I'm going to do that. And just keep checking, on the Archie site too, because they do promote when I'm hitting the road. And it starts off at Toronto Comic Con in March, and then it's going to be MegaCon, and then Emerald City, and then it just keeps on rolling for the rest of the year.
Awesome. Well, good luck. We'll check in. We'd love to talk to you again, maybe after some more storylines wrap up and stuff. It's really been a thrill. Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you. And congratulations on your 100th broadcast.
Thank you. You guys, that's Dan Parent. How cool is that? Please thank Dan for being a part of the show by heading over and liking his Facebook page. Thank Dan for being part of the show by going out and picking up Archie 650, 651, 652 out next week. That great World Tour storyline that he's working on right now. So, again, special thanks to Dan Parent for coming on and being a part of the 100th episode and answering all of your questions. And thank you for sending in questions for Dan and making this show what it is. On the way out, I want to remind everyone to head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. There you're going to find all of our prior episodes. There's a little button there you can click to listen to all of our other creator conversations. Tons of conversations over the last year with Giselle, with Tanya Del Rio, with Paul Kupperberg, Fernando Ruiz. Tons of folks working at Archie Comics and on Archie Comics. Also at RiverdalePodcast.com, you'll find links to write the show an email, RiverdalePodcast@yahoo.com. Like the show on Facebook. Follow the show on Twitter. You can call in. You can leave a voicemail with your questions, comments, concerns, whatever you want to say, to 573-427-2443. That's 5734-ARCHIE. Head over to RiverdalePodcast.com and click that link for TFAW, Things from Another World. It's a giant comic book shop. And if you go to RiverdalePodcast.com and click that link for Things from Another World, a percentage of what you spend will be kicked back to the show. So go buy some great comics and help out the show at the same time. I guess to wrap things up, to close things out, thanks so much to all of you for hanging with me for the last 100 episodes. Thanks to everyone who came along for the ride, everybody who showed up in the last 10 episodes, the last 5 episodes. Thank you for listening for the first time, if you're listening for the first time. We got a bunch of great stuff planned for this year. I really couldn't be more excited about how the show's going. So get in touch with your thoughts and ideas, and we'll sign off for this 100th episode and come back next week to start our next 100. Until then, my name is Jonathan, and I'll see you again next week here in lovely Riverdale, USA.